Hi, I'm Jim Giblin, VP of Strategic Alliances for Wilmac Technologies, along with our SME and Sales Director for Information Archiving, Gary White. We're pleased to be joined today by Chuck Branum, CX Specialist with C1. I've had the pleasure of knowing Chuck for over 20 years, having worked together in the customer interaction space during that entire time. We've been fortunate enough to stay in touch and cross paths over the years through business dealings and industry events. A handful of years ago, Chuck was instrumental in bringing Wilmac in as a partner to C1 to solve a very critical issue that they often encounter. That said, what better way to share our story with the value we bring C1's customers than an open discussion with Chuck and Gary, who have worked closely together creating such mutual success. I'll hand it over to Chuck.
Thanks. Yeah, you're right. It's been at least 20 years, and certainly done a lot of our work around the continuity replay and extraction for customers, but we also use you guys for public safety. So anything nice public safety, you're our go-to partner for that as well. So 5 years together around continuity replay, but 20 years probably across the industry. I've been in the industry for about 21, so I've probably known Jim the entire time I've been within this, what used to be called customer experience something before, then WFO, now WEM. So it's changed over the years. And we do have probably about 70 plus opportunities that we worked with together. We've got about 16 accounts that we probably closed, but it's been a little bit more than that. I think we've probably got 30 plus client executives that we've worked with, and all in that we've quoted so far about 8.4 million. So that's just in 5 years. And that's just around one primary product, which is the PS around extraction and the continuity replay as well. So it's been great. I mean, and it's an opportunity for us to really share with our customers a solution that they can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, I would echo that actually, Chuck. One of the big feedback that we get from C1 reps that we work with, and obviously there's quite a lot, and I think we're still barely scratched the surface, I suppose, in terms of total reps, but one of the first feedbacks that we get is, we didn't know this was possible. This was a problem statement given to my customer 6 months ago, or this was something that is going to help us stand out to either win back or retain an account, which, given the nature of our solution, we're involved in a lot of those changes around contact centers. So that's a lot of the good feedback that we get, that we're quite unique, we're quite niche, but we help C1 stand out in a marketplace where it's very competitive, and you have a big toolkit, so to speak, with what you can provide to customers. Something as unique as continuity helps, and you can see some of the accounts on the screen that we've helped win or will help win. Helps you secure some big names with some big dollars attached to it as well, for both us and the partner, obviously C1 in this case. So yeah, echo that statement, Chuck.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Even go back to some of the tools that are provided by the partners, because some of the vendors that we'll show later that we work with to extract legacy data out of have tools, but those tools are very expensive, and sometimes it'll take way too long. So a lot of these customers have a specific timeline. I think we'll talk about a couple of specific customers, and using the tools that are available to them right now just could not meet the needs. So they were on a sunset system or whatever. They had, I think the one customer we had wasn't 30 terabytes of data or something that they had to extract, and it was going to be very expensive to start with, but even the way they were doing it, it just couldn't be met in the timeline that they had illustrated to us. So,
so very briefly, what is continuity replay? Very simply, it's kind of a two-part process, and it solves the four main challenges that you'll see on the screen. So it's a two-part process. One part is extraction and conversion of data. So we have services where we can convert and decrypt and extract large portions of call recording data, voice data. The second part of that is continuity replay, which is a user interface designed to ingest and replay this data no matter where the original source came from. Traditionally focused on voice, but we've managed to actually expand that out to screen, chat, email, other data sets as well. And it resolves those four particular challenges where data might be still residing in legacy systems. So you have a customer with a long call retention policy, perhaps it's 5, 7, 10 years. We've seen up to 20 years with some of the engagements that we've had with C1, but they still have to maintain that legacy system or have a problematic upgrade schedule, which in itself brings risk and brings cost to that customer. So how can I clean that up appropriately? Data might be locked in proprietary and encrypted formats. If it's locked in a proprietary format, it means you're beholden to the application that it was originally recorded on, which obviously can put some customers in some difficult situations. I'm thinking of a current engagement that we have with Exelon, with Tolgari and Heather Foss, where Exelon's key driver was to actually use data recorded in NICE, but with other applications. And they weren't able to do this if the data is still locked in proprietary and encrypted formats. And that's production data, not just legacy that we mentioned in the prior point. They might have siloed systems. What we mean by that is there might be multiple different recording platforms, different entities within the organization, different lines of business that might use different systems of recording. I'm thinking of Emblem Health, for example, Chuck, where they had, I think we've got 5 or 6 different recording platforms across their network and their estate. Some were legacy, some were production, but we help them bring that into one interface, one single point of access for users, but also one single point of administration for the technical folks. And lastly, retention regulations. I mean, I have a kind of a running joke where retention's only ever going to get worse. We see compliance being more strict. We see retention policies increasing. We see the amount of interactions and the way customers interact with customers increase as well. And that's only going to get more complex and more harder to manage and more harder to administer. And that increases the amount of modalities recorded. So emails, chat, call recordings themselves, screen recordings, video, the way they interact with customers, all of these different media types are now being held to the same strict policies that voice perhaps were. So helping people navigate those retention regulations and having a platform that's designed to act as a legacy archive is also very powerful and helps us stand out. I'm thinking of Lincoln Financial Group in that particular instance. They're definitely for C1 was a very powerful driver for them to help them understand their retention regulations and how to manage different legal holds within different lines of business, which is very, very complex with their current systems that they were using. So that's continuity repo in a nutshell. And the key driver for us, and Chuck, I'm sure you would agree, would be kind of our vendor agnostic approach. There's a lot of different vendors out in the marketplace. There's probably 30 plus that we've integrated. There's plenty of those that we haven't named on this slide. I think you were talking about Mattersight, right, Chuck? And a few others.
Mattersight, NoahSoft, Telstrat. Yeah, don't be afraid if you're a rep out there and they've got some, really old system out there. Give them a try, because most of the time there's a way for them to figure out how to extract the data, whether it's encrypted or not, out of any system. So you're right.
Yeah, Jim will probably roll his eyes, but I steal his joke about batting 1,000 coming out of a British person. It doesn't sound quite right, does it, Jim?
Yeah, it's a baseball analogy, but it's true. We are batting 1,000. We're actually coming up on close to 40 different systems worldwide that we successfully extracted from. So, as Chuck mentioned, don't be shy. Bring us the information, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and you'll see there's the difference between on-site and cloud there. Sorry, excuse me. So on-site systems, they're more your traditional systems, your ACRs for the Verint, NICE, and the various flavors within, Redbox, Calabrio, Optivity, and a few others that we've named. Very good on those, very comfortable on those. But we also have a number of cloud connectors, which we see for either legacy data that they recorded in the cloud. Perhaps they recorded 5.9 data and they've moved to something else, or they had Genesis Cloud and they've moved to something else. But we have a number of connectors and have dealt with data also recorded by kind of these CCAS platforms as well, which leads to kind of production connection. What I mean by that is, we see a lot of customers coming to us today about, I record on 5.9 or I record on CX1. But I'm worried about the long-term storage costs of such platforms, particularly after that kind of 12-month initial mark, where the quality value of that call diminishes and it becomes a compliance problem. So how can I then, best or most efficiently store that data, or perhaps take more control over that data and take it down from the cloud? So we see actually a lot of people now engaging us on production platforms on the right. But the point here is continuity replay is very much at the center, but vendor agnostic in our approach can deal with the multitude of platforms no matter where they sit in that architecture, be it customers or third parties. A good example of this is Alorica. So Alorica, big BPO, and Chuck will correct me if I'm wrong in that respect.
Right.
But big BPO. They have a very large, sprawling recording estate. Naturally, because the way their business operates, they've got a number of different platforms. Nice, Veren, Genesis, I think, are the main three. I think there's Cool Miner now as well, Chuck. But the point is, they had an initial challenge with their NIM system, NIM 4.1 system, which was an old NICE recording system that they had on-prem. They had a large amount of data with this, about 390 million call recordings. And this was stored internally, I believe, in a data center that they were trying to exit as well, as part of an architecture cleanup. And the data was encrypted, and it was incredibly costly from the vendor. And Chuck mentioned this earlier, that the original options posed to Alorica were available to C1 at the time was only through the vendor, and that was prohibitive, both from a cost perspective, but also, as you alluded to, Chuck, I think the timelines NICE were giving you weren't in line with what Alorica wanted to achieve either.
Exactly. Right? They could only, I think they could only extract 100,000 calls a day, and I can't remember how much was out there, but it was like 30 terabyte, and it was way too much. Plus, they had a timeline. Plus, their NIM system's going sunset, so there was no support on it anymore. So you guys were able to add additional servers to provide the extraction quicker, which met the needs of the customer. So that was a big win for us, for sure.
Yeah, and you touched on some good points actually, because Wilmac, I mean, the reason why we can do what we can do is we've had 20 plus years in call recording. We know these systems in and out, and that came to the fore really for Alorica, because that legacy system, that NIM system, if you remember, was actually out of support, but also had several faults during the engagement, where Alorica very nearly lost all of their data and lost access entirely. And it was only down to really, and working with C1, our kind of engineering team and C1's engineering team, to actually fix that system before we even got in there to kind of save their data and convert their data. So it's testament to kind of the skill sets that we have in the call recording arena. But the NICE data, it was subject to 10-year retention requirements. Obviously, as a BPO, this is other customers' interaction data, in theory. So very highly scrutinized, very important that they maintain this data and access to this data. And that was the problem statement. And, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Chuck, I think the engagement you had with NICE and Alorica probably was around about 6 months before we got involved, perhaps, or certainly a time before we got involved.
Yeah, and it was an eye opener to me to find out how much it was going to cost using their existing solution that was provided by the manufacturer that they had in there, and just the difference. It was like a no-brainer. We were surprised it took them so as long as it did for them to sign the contract. Honestly, it was that good of a deal. So
I think that was. And I think Susan Massey can probably attest to this as well, that I think Alorica was one of those customers where C1 were wanting to do more. I mean, I suppose you always want to do more with all the customers, right? But I think you were traditionally always the Avaya supplier in that account, and you were looking for different avenues of retention and revenue from Alorica. And Continuity Replay, the solution we provided, gave C1 a different conversation to be having with Alorica to enable you to talk to different people and talk to different challenges. And what we provided was, or providing, should I say, was kind of decrypting and transcoding all of these into WAV formats. We actually moved the data up to Azure, for Alorica, so they can make use of better storage savings. I actually think C1 were involved in providing some of those services as well, Chuck. So again, additional streams of revenue from an infrastructure perspective, which I know is an initiative internally at C1. But ultimately, it kind of significantly lowered the costs and and solve this and remove this risk for Alorica, basically. And as a result, now we're hopefully going to be talking to them about a lot of different other stuff with all those systems that I mentioned earlier. But ultimately, it allowed them to decommission that NIM system, avoid that compliance risk, reduce those costs, remove that possibility of that fault and losing that data.
Yeah, and I think what it did too, Gary, is not only did it open up additional opportunities at Alorica, but a lot of our representatives, we call them client reps now instead of account reps, have other big businesses like us. Like, Susan works on a number of different BPOs, and she's brought you in on those as well. So it's not only opening up other avenues within Alorica, because it's been very successful. And I'll just say right now, it's been wonderful. I just got to say, it sounds like I'm, I don't know how I would say it without offending anybody, but you've never embarrassed us on a call, Gary. You or Charlie or any of the folks that you brought in as part of the team's been wonderful, and that's why they see how their customers respond to the continuity replay in this particular situation. So they're eager to bring on another opportunity. So we're just getting started as far as what we're doing with Wilmac Tech for sure.
Oh, that's great to hear. And actually, I don't know if you know this, Jack, but we had something similar, some similar feedback actually. I was during the Nissan deal with Jeff Bilardo and Neil Cockrell, and Neil actually mentioned to me that Nissan are historically very slow to move, very slow to trust, take a while to sign contracts, those types of things. And because of our engagement process, which was, our standard process, it's no different to any other process that we have, but we engage with them so well that they moved forward quicker than expected. And Neil and Jeff both have attested that to the approach that we had with them and the way that we conducted ourselves in calls and the way we conducted with the customer. So they said they've never had another vendor kind of have that impression on Nissan. So between your kind words and their kind words, I think we do a good job with C1.
Sure. Yep, I agree. For sure.
That's great. Well, I think we'll wrap things up now, but Chuck, again, we appreciate our partnership with C1 around the holidays here. We're very thankful for it. And we're also thankful for our long-term friendship with you. And as you mentioned, it's just the beginning. We're scratching the surface, and I think there's a lot of good we can do together.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Ditto. And, you can call, I don't have a problem with any folks working with Gary or Jim or Charlie or whoever they bring in on a team. Like I said before, it's been 100%. I'm never embarrassed. The client execs that we bring on are very happy with the outcomes that happen. You can contact me as well, I know, but certainly working directly with Gary, it's really easy to engage these guys too. So it's really, when you find an opportunity that smells like what Gary shared with you earlier, it's really 4 or 5 questions is all we need to know in order to put some of this benefit to use for your customers as well, for sure. So,
yeah, I know when we started, it can be quite a complex thing to talk about. One of the best ways I found engaging with the reps is just to think of elements of change. If you have customers going through change in their CCAS platforms, core recording platforms, telephony platforms, which naturally you will do, then inevitably there is a legacy question that probably hasn't been addressed in that engagement. And that working with some of the reps, that's how we've identified some good opportunities straight away. So yeah.
Very good.